Thanks for the introduction. Hello, everyone. Good evening. This is a big complex act. It is very difficult to cover in 45 minutes, but I will do my best to explain you the concepts. And feel free to ask your questions in the chat. And there is a dedicated 50 minutes at the end for clarifying any doubts you have. Is my screen visible? Am I sharing my screen? I think, right?
Yeah, I do see your screen. Maybe go to slideshow mode.
Yeah. Okay. So myself, Pradeep Kishore, I work as a Director of Product Security in Honeywell Technologies. There, I handle over 300 products in my portfolio. I am responsible for securing those products from design. Uh, so those products include mostly IoT devices. There are some cloud applications, mobile applications. So I'm responsible for securing all these different diverse spectrum of products. And as uh, Neil explained in the beginning that the European Union Cyber Resilience Act is going to disrupt the industry, just like how GDPR impacted the world. So right now, this is an act in European Union, and soon other countries also may adopt this sort of. I mean, the past trends show that even GDPR was initially launched in European Union, and later on similar laws were adopted in various other regions. So I think, I mean, other countries are also preparing to have the similar act in their regions. Okay, so before I go into the details, I would like to give two real life examples where you can easily correlate and relate it with this topic. So first is, so a few years back, we used to, I mean, we all use internet modems, right? Uh, so only few people who has knowledge about it can go to the configurations and enable the secure settings, change the default password and all that. So it was optional at that time. And customer is responsible for securing his environment. But now the CRA is going to change that. As a manufacturer of the device, he has to ensure that the product is secured by design. If there are any such secure configurations, then it should be mandated for the customer to configure before it start functioning. So it used to bring this sort of change. So every product that is placed in European Union region must be secure by design, and it should be secure by default. And second example is the seat belts in the car, right? Initially, I mean, it's not a security, it's basically a safety feature in the car. Initially, the seat belts were launched and that was optional. So whoever want more safety, so they used to buy that seat belts, and only the people who bought it, they were able to use it. But now many regulations are passed. So now every car will have the seat belts. For every seat, there will be seat belts. All this because of the regulations. So similarly, this EU-CRA is bringing a similar regulation to secure digital products in European Union region. So going forward, security is no more optional. It is no more an add-on feature. It should be built in. It should be baked into the products, right from design till, I mean, throughout its life cycle. So this is a paradigm shift. So the burden of cybersecurity moves from end user to the manufacturer. And this is a horizontal cybersecurity law. I mean, different regions within Europe may have different laws addressing the same problem, but in a different way. And this is harmonizing. I mean, this is a horizontal cybersecurity law across European Union region. It has taken all the best from different regional laws and consolidated. Now, this central law is rolled out throughout European Union. And you all know CE marking, right? Conformity to European standards. So now this security standard also has become part of CE. So if your product, if you want to sell it in European region beyond December 11, 2027, you should declare in your declaration of conformity that you are conforming to EU-CRA Act along with CE marking. Otherwise, you cannot place your product in European Union market. And security is not a point of time. I mean, you can, while developing it, if you develop a secure product, that is not good enough. So you have to maintain that security throughout the product life cycle. We'll go, we'll dig deep into the details. So when I mention product, you all may get doubt, what are those products? We have so many products, right? So many varieties of products. So what products fall into this scope? So this act is applicable for any software or hardware product that has data connection capability and that has commercial interest. So they are sold in European Union. If it is a free offering like open source software, it is not in the scope. But if there is any commercial activity involved around that software or hardware, then it falls into the scope. And it should have a data connection. So this data connection could be physical connections like wires, optical or mechanical interfaces, or it could be logical connections like APIs, network sockets, or indirect connections. Because if this is part of a bigger system that has the ability to connect to other devices or networks, then that also falls into the scope. So why this indirect connection is also into scope is, so hackers often use these lateral movement techniques to infiltrate into the network, and they look for weak points so to exploit. They don't directly target, they don't hack the target. So they find the weak points in the system, and through that they will do lateral movement. So that is why every product in that ecosystem must be secured. And certain exemptions are there, there are other existing laws that also enforce a similar level of cybersecurity. So those kind of devices exempted because they are already covered in under a different regulation. For example, medical devices, motor vehicles, marine and aviation equipment. And if any device is meant for national security, then they are exclusive use for defense, then that is also out of scope. But the same device could be used for general public also. In that case, that falls into the scope. That is called dual use. It is used for national security as well as it is meant for general public or general industry consumption. So then that will be in the scope of CRA. And non-commercial open source, as I mentioned earlier, open source is not covered under this EU-CRA Act. And pure SaaS cloud-based applications, they are called services, not the products. So they are out of scope. But if there is any service that is in relation to a device, for example, CCTV camera. So CCTV camera record the videos and upload to a cloud, and that product vendor also provides that cloud service to go and watch the recording. So in that case, though it is a service, still it comes under CRA because that is related to the CCTV camera that is sold in European Union. So when I mentioned what is security throughout product lifecycle. So first, the product need to be built with essential cybersecurity requirements. I will talk about that later. What is essential cybersecurity requirements from CRA point of view? And the products need to be designed by embedding the security right from design requirements phase. And all those requirements all those requirements need to be implemented. I mean, the product should be developed with those secure by design principles, secure by design concepts, and they should be built secure by default. So you all know what is secure by default, right? So the product may have secured options and insecured options, but the product should be shipped with by enabling secured option, not the insecured option. For example, there is a product that has a web interface and it can connect over HTTP and also HTTPS. So HTTPS should be enabled by default and HTTP should be disabled. And if any customer want to enable HTTP, then they should be able to go and enable that insecure option. So by default, all the secured options should be enabled and the product should be released with no known exploitable vulnerabilities. So this is very important point, and this is a change in culture. How the engineering teams, how the product development teams handle the vulnerabilities. I have seen several organizations postpone fixing these vulnerabilities. So someone detect, I mean, as part of the SSD, secure SSDLC, we detect the vulnerabilities. Engineering teams plan them in some future release and leisurely fix them. But as per this EU-CRA, they shouldn't be releasing a product with any known exploitable vulnerability. I mean, that vulnerability is brought to the notice of the manufacturer, and still if they ship the product with that known vulnerability, then there would be serious penalty. It's up to 2 point. I mean, I'll talk about those penalties later. So this is going to change the way how we develop the products, how we treat vulnerabilities before launching a product. So we should address all the known vulnerabilities before placing the product into the market. And then deliver. So at the time of deliver, we should declare that the product complies to EU-CRA standard. And depending on the criticality of that product, that declaration, that assessment should come from third party. So there are 4 different categories of products. And so, I mean, if it falls under default category, self-certification is sufficient. Otherwise, a third party, an authorized third party has to certify the products, and then we have to declare in that it is complying to EU-CRA Act in our declaration of conformity along with the CE marking. And the manuals should clearly instruct what security configurations the customer has to make in order to run that product in a secured environment. How that secured environment must be created at the customer. I mean, we cannot. So sometimes the security is joint responsibility. We cannot build in all the security features in our product. That is a limitation. So there are certain things which customer only can configure, And all those secure configurations need to be discussed in our product manuals. And after you place the market, until we announce end of life for that product, so the organizations will have the legal obligation to provide support. So that means securing the product throughout its life cycle. Until that becomes end of life, it is a legal obligation for the manufacturers to provide patches for security issues that are discovered after the release, and then they need to patch in a timely manner and release the patches at free of cost to the customers. So every product must be built with these 13 essential cybersecurity requirements. I think one is missed here, and that is a secure delivery of patches. But yeah, there are 12 cybersecurity requirements, 13 cybersecurity requirements that must be implemented in each and every product in order to certify for CRA compliance. So if you look at all these, I mean, I'm not going to explain all these 13 requirements, but at a high level, you look at this, right? The CIA, confidentiality, integrity, availability. And so if I want to explain all this in one single statement, or if you look at the first requirement, no known exploitable vulnerabilities. This covers the rest of the 12 requirements, because if there is a risk involved due to if there is no protection on confidentiality, so then that can be easily proved to be exploitable. So unless someone prove that something is not exploitable, then that must be treated as non-exploitable vulnerability. And if any of other requirements doesn't meet, definitely it will fall into the first category. That means it won't complete with the first requirement. The product should have no known exploitable vulnerabilities at the time of launch of the product, at the time of releasing a product. So that's why I say that this is the mother of all the requirements, which covers the rest of the requirements as well. So these are various requirements, right? And for sure, EU-CRA is not expecting us to implement highest level of security controls. So, I mean, it has covered almost all the categories of security risks it is asking us to address all kinds of cyber security risks, but nowhere it is mentioning that you need to implement highest level of security. It should be always based on the risk. So the product can have a vulnerability, but if there is no risk of exploiting it, it is acceptable to live with that vulnerability. But if there is any risk, then that must be addressed. So that is called risk. So as per the risk definition, vulnerability is not a risk. So if there is any threat associated to a vulnerability, that is called risk. And we should implement all the security requirements based on the risk. If there is no risk, of confidentiality, you don't have to implement any of the confidentiality related requirements. And also during the risk assessment, we should consider what is the intended purpose and what are the conditions in which that product is going to operate. I mean, suppose the product is meant to work on an insecure protocol for interoperability purposes. So though it is insecure protocol and it violates the principle of secure by default, still it is acceptable, because if you go with a secured option, that product loses that interoperability and the product becomes useless. So that's why intended purpose plays an important role in order to determine what is a risk, what is not a risk. And foreseeable misuse cases. So these should be considered. I mean, first one talks about the intended purpose. There could be unintended misuse cases. I mean, that also the manufacturing companies should foresee, and appropriate guardrails need to be implemented for misuse cases also. And also one need to consider the lifetime of the product while evaluating the risk. And this EU-CRA is prescribing minimum 5 years of support period for every product. And that 5 years is not fixed. It could be less or it could be more, but it depends on the nature of the product and intended purpose of the product. And by considering all this and by considering the residual risk, one should implement the security controls. We need not implement highest level of security controls in our products. And these are vulnerability handling requirements. That means the organization should maintain SBOMs, software bill of materials, at least to the top level dependencies. And when it says that top level dependency, I strongly believe that it includes the vulnerabilities of its transitive dependencies also. So all that need to be cascaded to the top level, and at least at the top level, we should maintain software bill of materials as part of our technical documentation. We need not to share it to the customers, but we should maintain that, and we should be able to produce to the authorities in case they want to inspect. And then remediation. So timely, we should be remediating the security vulnerabilities in the product and release the patches without delay. And they should be given for free of cost. The manufacturer shouldn't be charging for the patches. And then address all the flaws throughout the 5-year minimum support window. And transparency. So every organization should disclose their vulnerability disclosure. I mean, disclose how someone can report the vulnerabilities in their product. So the vulnerability disclosure policies must be publicized. And also once a vulnerability is addressed, that patch should go into the production in the customer environments. Then only they become secure, right? That means appropriate advisory should be given to the customers to apply the patches. Otherwise, customers doesn't know. And also, we need to balance when we need to release the advisories, to what extent we can provide the details of those vulnerabilities that we addressed. Basically, that information shouldn't become a handy tool for the hackers. Basically, our advisories or the public disclosures should help our customers to secure their environment. So we need to balance there. And this is another obligation for the manufacturers that come into effect from September 2026. So in another 4 months, September 11, 2026. And what is this? So if there is any incident happen in one of the product, then the manufacturer must report to the authorities. So there would be regulatory authorities. So that should be disclosed to the authorities. And within 24 hours of knowing that vulnerability in their product, the manufacturer should give the early warning notification to the authorities like ENISA and national CSERTs that would be defined for each country in the European Union region. And within 72 hours, full incident details must be produced. And within 14 days, a final comprehensive report should be produced. And here nowhere it is mentioning that one need to provide a fix by so and so timeline. But when you make this sort of announcement to the public, and if you don't provide any fix, then that will spoil your reputation. So that's why, though it is not prescribed in the act to address the vulnerabilities by so and so timeline, the team should, because we are making this information public, we should provide the remediation plan. And if something can be minimized or mitigated through, sorry. Yeah. So what I meant to say is, though it is the act is explicitly mentioning that the fixes need to be provided within the timelines, but that is implicit because without providing fix, if you make any public announcement, it doesn't make sense for the customers unless the customer can do some configuration changes to mitigate that risk until we provide a patch. And I mentioned earlier that the products can be classified into 4 different categories. That is, first category is critical products, and then second one is important class 1, and third one is important class 2, and default. I mean, if a product doesn't fall into any of those 3 categories, it will fall into default category. And if it is a critical or important product, it must be assessed by a third party. And if it is a class 1 product, important class 1 product, and it is following harmonized standards. I mean, along with this EU-CRA, there are some bodies working to make some industry standards harmonized to EU-CRA. For example, ISA 62443, 4-1 and 4-2. So there are, I mean, there are efforts put to bring ISA 62443, 4-1 and 4-2 harmonized with the EU-CRA. And if you comply to that, then that would be considered as compliance to EU-CRA. And there are some vertical standards as well, depending on the industry. Suppose yours is a browser, your product is a browser. So there would be some vertical standard defined for that browser, harmonized vertical standard. And if you follow that, then it will be considered as, it will be presumed as conforming to this EU-CRA. And what are the timelines? So this act is already into force. It came into effect on December 10, 2024. And the first, not first, by June 11, 2026, assessment bodies will be announced. So who can assess that our products are EU-CRA compliant. And by September 11, 2026, the mandatory vulnerability and incident reporting obligations come into picture. Even if a product is not CRA compliant, but it falls into EU-CRA scope. So initially I mentioned there is 3 criteria, right? If it is sold in Europe and it has a data connection, and if it is a software and hardware, then it falls into EU-CRA scope. For all those products, though they are not CRA compliant, it has this mandatory vulnerability and incident reporting obligation. And from December 11, 2027, so every product that we are going to sell in Europe must have CE marking, and in the declaration of conformity, we should declare that it is compliant to EU-CRA requirements. So what is the cost of non-compliance? It is 2.5% or 15 million euros if a product is released to the market by breaching essential cybersecurity requirements. And 10 million euros or 2%, whichever is higher, if they fail on incident reporting obligations. That starts from September 2026. If the organizations provide misleading or incorrect information, then it would be 5 million euros. So, I mean, this slide itself will tell that what is the how seriously the organization should take EU-CRA. Just like GDPR, how it disrupted and how big organizations also made to pay those penalties. Reputed organizations like Google, etc. They all paid for non-compliance for GDPR. So similarly, the organizations are going to be penalized if they are not complying to EU-CRA. That's why every product manufacturing company should take this EU-CRA act seriously, and they should design the products by keeping all secure by design principles in mind. So what is the conclusion? So this CRA is going to disrupt the product manufacturing industry, and so customers' environments are secured, much secured than earlier, and the secure by design has become a legal necessity. And also, I forgot to mention that if our product has any open source components in it, obviously it makes sense, right? I mean, over 80% of the code comes from open source software libraries. So though open source software vendors or library owners, the communities don't have any obligation to comply to CRA, as an integrator of those components into our products, we have the legal obligation to secure them. So what it means is that we have, suppose a vulnerability is discovered in an open source component. We need to work with the open source community to fix that. And if they can't fix it, we need to switch to an alternative open source component, or we ourselves have to fix it and share that fix to the community. So this is an important cultural change that is going to bring to this open source software industry. So whatever the components, hardware components or software third-party code that we are integrating to your product, it is ultimately our responsibility to fix those issues. And those components or third-party code need not to be CRA compliant. There is no mandatory obligation to make them CRA compliant, but our end product must be CRA compliant. So we can use non-CRA compliant components or third-party code in our product, but your end product must be CRA compliant. Yeah, that's all. Any questions?
Thanks, Pradeep. So definitely there are questions. So maybe I would read it out from the chat. So the first question is from Brahmananda. What happens to the product that are released before December 2027? Can we still continue to sell these as post of 2027, same after the same December 2027?
Yes, you cannot, sorry, not yes. Answer is no, you cannot sell.
So it
So
has to comply, right?
yeah, it has to comply. So suppose there is a TV, a certain model and certain version is there, and till December 2027, you can sell it. But same model, same version, you cannot sell if it is not CRA compliant. So you cannot manufacture and you cannot sell it in European Union region, but still you can sell it in other regions where this sort of acts are not there. But in European Union region, without CRA compliance, declaring in your declaration of conformity, you cannot place that product in the market for sale in European Union region. Though you were releasing in the same product before December 11, 2027.
Okay. Thanks, Pradeep. The next question is from Ashish. Are there any official certification available in India?
I mean, by June this year, they will notify those assessment bodies, and we can engage with them to certify our critical and important class 2 and class 1 products. If it is a default one, internal assessment would be sufficient, internal declaration would be sufficient. Only if it is a critical or important class 2 and class 1 products that doesn't conform to any harmonized standards. So all these three categories of products need to be certified by an approved third party. And I'm not sure if there are any. I mean, still time is there. I mean, it will announce that list in June 2026.
Okay, thank you. The next one is from Venu. It's about if we discover an actively exploited 0-day vulnerability, but we do not have a patch ready, how do we comply with the mandatory 24-hour ENISA reporting window?
So here nowhere it is talking about the patch. And if there is any actively exploited vulnerabilities, like caves, right? CISA has published caves in open source libraries. So if there are any actively exploited vulnerabilities, still we have the legal obligation to give our report with whatever the information that we have within 24 hours, and then we need to provide detailed report in 72 hours. Usually what happens is we may give certain advisories like they can install some sort of a firewall, or they can install some, I mean, they can configure some firewall rule to filter out certain kinds of traffic. I mean, there could be some workarounds we can suggest, though they may not address the complete vulnerability. There could be other precautions the customers can take to secure their environment. So all those such information must go in these advisories, I mean, those reports, mandatory reports. But there is no mention of fixing those I mean, there are no timelines prescribed to fix the vulnerabilities. Though it is implicit, right? It is a company's reputation to make such public announcements without having fixes. So it spoils their reputation. So customers don't prefer to have such products deployed in their environments, which doesn't provide patches within, I mean, provide patches on urgent basis for critical vulnerabilities.
Mm-hmm. Good. The next one is from Ashish. Where would software-defined vehicles fit within the CRA classification framework?
I think there is no such explicit classification under critical and important categories. So then it will fall under default.
Okay, so default class then.
I need to check that. Basically, there are very good detailed instructions, and I mean, there are categories of products that are clearly mentioned in one categorization document. So they have listed what falls under critical, what falls under important class 1 and class 2. And if there is no exact match, then it will fall under default category. For example, you have operating system. Your product has operating system. And operating system fall under important class 1 or class 2, I believe. But since your product is using operating system, your product cannot be classified into that class 1 or class 2. So your product's intended purpose will decide. Your product is some accounting software that is using this operating system. So then your intended purpose is accounting system, not the operating system. So then it doesn't fall into any of those three categories, then it will fall into default category. So we have to exactly match with the published document on this categorization. And if it doesn't fall into any of those categories, then that should be treated as default. And also software defined vehicles, if it covers under exempted EU regulations on motor vehicles, then you don't have to comply to CRA, because that other regulations, vehicle related regulation, will cover that automatically.
Okay, thanks. The next one is from Karthik. Without harmonized standards, how do you approach compliance to CRA as the essential requirements are at high level?
It is independent. So if your product is uh, uh, so anyhow, you need, if it is a critical or important class 2 or class 1, there would be third party body you need to engage with, and that will ensure that you have uh, uh, you are complying to these harmonized standards or vertical standards. And if it is a class 1, important class 1, and you are conforming to any of these vertical standards or harmonized standards, uh, then it will be presumed as conformity. So then you need not, I mean, you can directly declare that you are conforming to that vertical standard and it is complying to EU-CRA. But if it is a critical or important class 2, then, or even some cases of class 1, it must be certified by third party body, approved third party. So they will consider that harmonized standard, a vertical standard, and they will certify accordingly.
Okay, thank you. Another one from Karthik. So, vulnerability to be reported publicly. Does this mean updating to NISA portal is sufficient, or organization should have their CVD web page?
I think this, you mean incident, I believe. So if it is an incident, we have to report to the ENISA. ENISA or designated CSERT in that country.
Mm,
So I mean, we need not to publish anything publicly, but we have to report it to the concerned authorities. They in turn
okay.
make it public,
Mhm.
but there is no requirement to make it public. But once it goes to the body, that regulatory bodies, right? I mean, depending on the case, they may publicize. They may release some sort of advisories.
Okay, good. The next one is from Nilesh. Can you elaborate on how a product with non-CRA compliant components be CRA compliant? What are the obligations around it?
There is no obligation on using non-CRA compliant, non-CRA compliant components. You can use non-CRA, I mean, CRA non-compliant products in your product, but the vulnerability shouldn't be exposed in our end product. There should be other mitigation controls, or you may not be using that vulnerable functions in our end product, and you will put appropriate guardrails in it so that the vulnerability don't get exposed in our end product. So as long as you are taking care of CRA compliance of end product, having non-compliant product components in it is not a problem.
Okay, thank you. The next one is again from Karthik. Uh, so certification bodies like Bureau Veritas BV or TUV, can they certify a product?
Yes, yes. I mean, that list will be announced in June 2026.
Okay, so we are very close to it then. All right, the next one, can you explain more about the implication on free and open source and any explicit regulation you can share for detailed study, like any reference material or URL?
I think better restrict the discussion only to EU-CRA. And as per EU-CRA, there is no legal, as long as you are distributing that software for free, you don't have any CRA obligations. But if you are having any commercial activity, you take the open source software and you are reselling it by customizing it, then it will fall under EU-CRA. So as long as there is no commercial activity involved around that open source software, you don't have any obligations.
Okay. Thanks, Pradeep. I think we take last three questions. So this is from Sanat. What about specific software applications in the product that have certain vulnerabilities? Is CRA applicable for this? If you could elaborate a bit on it.
So the first requirement clearly says that the product should be released with any there shouldn't be any known vulnerabilities in the product. So if it is already known to you, you are not supposed to make a release of that product. You must address all the vulnerabilities in it. And after you place it in the market and that vulnerability came to your notice, then you need to provide the patch. And there are no prescribed timelines. It is mentioning that as soon as possible. That means as early as possible. But the organizations must release patches with the fixes, and they should be distributed at free of cost to the customer. And organization shouldn't charge for those patches. That is the only obligation.
Okay. Thank you. The next one is from Hema. You have mentioned that the CRA mandates that the updates for the products sold in EU should be free. What about the custom developed product based on customer requirement?
Yeah, I mean those if there are any such products, then they're meant for general public, and since they're not meant for general public, general industry, so the what is that? The contract between the vendor and that organization takes precedence, and it need not to be CRA compliant if it is manufactured for a specific customer.
Okay. The next one is from Sanat. What if these products that are non-CRA compliant get sold indirectly, such as third-party marketplaces or unofficial sources?
Officially, one cannot place it in the Europe market, and distributors also will ensure that if it has only CRA certificate in it, then only they will distribute it. And unofficially, if someone is selling, nobody can stop them because it's unofficial.
Mhm. Okay, the next one is sorry, further to clarify, but rather selling if we use the FOSS. I'm assuming it's free and open source software in our product and use it for our customer application, not selling. Will this regulation applicable?
No, FOSS, free and open source software, doesn't fall into EU-CRA scope. We don't have to, I mean, the FOSS community, whoever making that open source software available to the public, they need not to comply to CRA, but the integrator who is integrating this product in their commercial products, they should be CRA compliant if they want to sell it in European Union region. The end product must be CRA compliant if they want to sell in European Union, but free and open source library that are distributed freely to the community, they need not to be CRA compliant.
Okay, thanks, Pradeep. And the last one, will ISA for evaluators IC 49, the new certification for 62443 evaluators, be useful in evaluating the compliance of CRA?
No, I mean, so at the moment, if you are complying to 62443-4-1 or 4-2, you are not considered as CRA compliant. You should explicitly comply to CRA. But I think around September 2026, this harmonized ISA 62443-4-1, 4-2 will be published. And if you are complying to those, then if it is a class 1 product, then it will be presumed as complying to CRA automatically.
Okay.
In other cases, I mean, for other categories of product, it must, I mean, if it is default one, internal self-certification would be sufficient without proving that it is compliant to ISO 62443-4-1 or 4-2. And for critical and important class 2, third party need to be engaged and they will assess the compliance.
Okay. Good. Thanks, Pradeep. So that's very kind of you to answer so many questions at the end of the webinar, right? So we had a good bunch of questions. So with this, I think we come to the close of the webinar. So I would like to thank everyone for being part of today's insightful webinar on this act, and Pradeep as well for sharing a lot of insights on this, starting with the scope and also through the security through the product life cycle. You also spoke about the vulnerability handling requirements, the mandatory incident reporting. So I think overall quite a good session, a lot of insights on this topic that is making a lot of news, at least in the EU regions or companies who operate from there. So yes, we truly appreciate your participation, everyone who joined this session, and also for posting some good, interesting questions. Hope you enjoyed it. And thanks, Pradeep, once again for your time and sharing the knowledge to the community. With that, thank you all. I wish you a nice weekend and a nice evening, Friday evening as well.
Thank you all. Have a nice day.
Thanks,
Bye.
Pradeep.